Hey, it's the right Rican, and I want to talk about this DA in New York and Manhattan in particular. But look, I know if you clicked on it, you may go, if you don't live in New York City or Manhattan, you're gonna wonder what does this have to do with you. But the problem is these type of DAs are getting elected all across the country, not just in New York City. And that's the problem for what's going on. It's like that, you have crime exploding around the country, and they're it's been blamed on COVID, the COVID lockdowns and all this stuff. But in reality, if you want to see what's caused the explosion, is the basically the lack of prosecution. And you're going to see here with this DA, what's he doing is, so you can have an idea. This is the one that's most egregious to me. It goes, Bragg's memo detailed the following instructions for prosecutors to reduce charges filed by cops in various cases. Armed robbers who use guns or deadly weapons to stick up stores and other businesses will be prosecuted for petty larceny, a misdemeanor provided no victims were seriously injured and there's no general risk of harm to anyone. If someone has a gun to your face or a knife to your face, unless they actually do it, of course, they're not going to cause you any physical harm. But the psychological harm is done once that happens. So it goes here, they would be charged with armed robbery. They wouldn't be charged with armed robbery, which is a Class B felony, which would typically be punishable by a maximum of 25 years in prison. Now, granted, 25 years in prison for that, even that, but that's the maximum. Okay. There's flexibility with that. While petty larceny subjects the offender to up to 364 days in jail. So that means 1 day short of a year and $1,000 fine. No. Okay. You put a gun in someone's face, or you stick a knife in someone's face, you should not get a year in jail. You should not just get a year in jail. You have to have a happy medium. And that's just saying, oh, okay, it's okay. And then, this whole no bail nonsense is allowing people to do this stuff, and they leave, and they do something. I mean, you've had cases where someone was arrested 3 times and then ended up murdering someone. That's the problem with what's going on in these. Like I said, it's not just about what's going on here in Manhattan, but there's other DAs around the country that are getting their talking points from these type of their fellow Democratic district attorneys, their progressive district attorneys. There's nothing progressive about this. This is regressive. We're giving the streets back to criminals. And, they're talking about here. Let me see, what's the other article, what I'm talking about here, where they talk about Bragg won't pursue fair beating, resisting arrest, and other non-violent, non-felony charges, angering the cop union. Which, if I was the cops, I'd be pissed too, because you're arresting people and then they're going to go back on the street. That's disheartening. That's so disheartening to these cops, that they arrest these people and they're back on the streets within, a couple of hours, if that much. That's the sad thing about it. And sorry, I forgot to put my timer so I can know how long I've been talking. But yeah, this is not just a New York City issue. This is just an issue of DAs trying to be soft on crime, and there is being too soft, there is being too hard. I'm not going to sit here and say, let's say for example, locking up the like, you know, people arrested for um let's say fair hopping. You know, you jump the turnstile, and now granted, I think you should arrest them, bring them in, make sure they don't have any other charges, and then, you know, issue them like a citation, a fine, because you don't want them to repeat doing this stuff either. Because if you're not charging them with anything, or if you're not giving them any penalty, they're going to keep jumping the turnstiles. They're going to stuff like that. That was some of the stuff with the broken windows theory, and with that Giuliani brought in that cleaned up New York, was sometimes people who jump the turnstile, that may not be a serious crime, but some of these people are serious criminals. They don't give a shit. So if you bring them into the station, you know, run their prints, see if they have any other priors. That's how they were getting people off the streets. They were getting people off the streets, you know, that were jumping turnstiles, and it's all, look, oh, this person has a um you know, an arrest warrant out for them. Oh, good, we got them off the streets. Um so there's some stuff here where it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think here where they talk about drug dealers believed to be acting as low-level agents of a seller will be prosecuted only for misdemeanor possession, which I'm fine with, because if you're the, you know, anyone who's seen The Wire, if you're the one just, you know, let's say, um, you know, you usually had the stash, you had the people who were going to the stash to give to one of the sellers. Those people who are just giving it to the selling it to the people, those aren't the big fish. That's just, you know, those are the people who are just, um you know, you're the store owner, you're not the store owner, you're, you know, you're one of the people stocking the shelves. That's all you're doing. You don't own the store. And that's what's going on with these people. um but do I think they should just walk? But I like what it says here. It goes, they'll be prosecuted for misdemeanor possession, which is fine. You know, you don't want to, you know, have felonies uh for all these people trying to, you know, trying to eat. I'm not going to sit there and, you know, I'm from New York. I've seen good people fall into the drug game. I'm not going to say that um they shouldn't have any consequences, but to pull a felony on someone for something like that, it pretty much messes up their life. I agree with that. What they're talking about says you want to be careful with overcharging. I get it, but there's certain crimes where you just like I said, like this whole thing with, if you brazen enough to put a gun in somebody's face, to use a gun or a knife in a robbery, no, I don't think you should be charged with something light. I don't think you should be charged with petty larceny. You should be charged with armed robbery. That's it. Um, you know, so it just goes here: burglars who steal from residential storage areas, part of homes that aren't accessible to a living area, and businesses located in mixed use buildings will be prosecuted for low level Class D felony that only covers break-ins instead of more serious crimes. Those more serious crimes, Class B, Class C, would be punishable up to 25 and up to 50. Um, you know, usually when you know, do burglaries and stuff like that, they usually go by how much you steal, or if you're putting someone's life in danger. Okay, so there's certain things I can't speak to that in that particular case, but like I said, these are things that are, it's not just happening in New York City and in Manhattan, but there's all these, and you know, I know you're not allowed to talk about it, but you have these Soros sponsored DAs. Like I didn't look into this guy to see if his um his campaign was sponsored by Soros, but there is a lot of Soros sponsored DAs across the country, and this is stuff that they're doing. They're light on crime, which is causing dysfunction around the country, because you have these spikes in crime and then they're not being prosecuted. In turn, you have people living in fear in their communities. That's the whole thing. That's what these people don't get about the defund the police. The communities mostly affected by this whole defund the police movement is uh minorities, people of color, whatever you want to say. Our communities are the ones that suffer the most from this, because you know what, in the suburbs, they're gonna do them. They're gonna still have cops patrolling the streets. They're still gonna arrest people. Okay. But in the cities, where that's where you're, defunding the police, you know, poor people can't, that's what they have the police for. In these richer communities, they have, gated communities that, protect them. You have, the suburb cops that they're, not constrained as much as the city cops. That's what kills me about this is this, like, you here in Manhattan, my parents live in Manhattan. This is going to affect them. Okay. This is why it's relevant to me. This scares me. My parents live in Manhattan. So if someone, puts a gun to my mother's face, you know, they're only going to get a petty larceny charge. Trust me when I go, that's not, if it was back in the day, you do that to someone's mom, you better be damn sure, you better hope that there's not someone that knows someone in the game, because you're gonna face backlash. The cops don't get you, those people will. Okay. Because it happens. You have well, all these people involved that passed away. So I could say a story of, like, my grandfather, someone robbed my grandfather's store back in the day. And my grandfather was, everyone loved my grandfather. My grandfather, before credit cards, before anything, he used to give people credit. So, he, write down, oh, you spent $10. Okay, well, if by the end of the month you don't give me, you don't give me the $10 back, then no more credit for you. And but that's the way they did things back in the day. Someone tried to rob my grandfather. A bunch of his patrons grabbed the guy, beat the shit out of the guy. Granted, the guy passed away from the wounds from the beatdown, but no one ever robbed my grandfather's store again. And because it gained that reputation. And but this, I remember when I lived in Philly, there was a case where someone raped like a 10-year-old little girl, and the cops actually had to come in because the community was beating the shit out of the guy. And this was like maybe 10, 12 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. This happened where I think it was like in the Kensington area, where a bunch of people, they just started, wilding out on the guy. And the cops had to come and arrest him. They weren't going to arrest all the community people who were, doing vigilante justice, but criminals know who they can and can't mess around with for the most part. Okay. And if the cops aren't going to do their part, okay, you're going to force communities to do this stuff. What I'm talking about, you're going to force you're going to see more vigilante justice, and then you're going to see people get arrested that were just protecting their communities. Like, people complain about, for you people who hate on Kyle Rittenhouse, there wouldn't be no Kyle Rittenhouse if the police that day would have been able to do their jobs and quash the riots. But there's people who wanted the riots to keep going, wanted businesses to be burned down, and that made the Kyle Rittenhouse situation possible. So these DAs that are not prosecuting crimes are letting criminals back out in the streets. Okay, not only does it make crime worse because these criminals become brazen and don't fear the law, not that they feared it to begin with, but what's going to happen is you're going to see um, community crime, in the sense that you're going to see people that you're going to see vigilante justice with communities, where they're going to, if the DAs are going to handcuff the cops, then guess what? What's going to happen is you're going to see vigilante justice, and you're going to see that these, even the cops, they're going to be like, you know what? Our hands were tied. I'm not going to arrest it. They may not arrest that person because, you know what? They did what the cops couldn't do. And you don't want that type of, you don't want that type of vigilante justice on the streets either. Okay, you need a balance. You can't have, you don't want heavy-handed approach either. You don't want people to be charged with crimes for stupid things. Just, but at the same time, you don't want a light-handed approach either, because then people are just going to get away with doing crimes, and they're not going to be, I recommend anyone who's never seen The Wire, you got to watch The Wire, especially I think it's season 3 with the Amsterdam, basically, where like one of the captains decided to make an area where the drug dealers could go and sling dope and shoot up, and they would leave it to that one area of the city and be like, okay, we wouldn't prosecute there, but if you step out of that area, you're done. So it was basically making drugs legalized in certain areas, and it did reduce the crime. And what's going on here is the kind of, numbers are gonna go down, okay, with crime, with what they're doing here, because instead of charging someone doing armed robbery, instead of charging them with armed robbery, which is a felony, they're going to charge them with a misdemeanor. So, oh, look, crime's going down because there's less felonies and more misdemeanors. Yeah, if you're not charging felonies to people who should be charged felonies and charging them misdemeanors, guess what? Yeah, the crime's going to look like it's down, but guess the people living in the communities, they're going to see that. And remember that for you people who live in Manhattan, for you people who have these Soros DAs, you voted for this. You voted for this. They fooled you into going, oh, look, we got to defund the police, and it's good for your community, and we have to be soft on crime. They don't call it being soft on crime because there's some reasonable stuff. Like I said, with the drug dealers, you don't, you want to charge the big fish. You don't want to charge the little fish. But if you're handcuffing the police, you're letting these criminals run free on the street, with these bail reforms and all that, you have people, coming out of, getting arrested, getting let out, getting arrested, getting let out 3 or 4 times in the same day. That's ridiculous. I understand you don't want someone stuck in jail for a stupid crime, but if they're 3 times in a day, it's like, okay, there has to be limits on how nice and how soft you're going to be on these criminals, because if not, they're not going to be the ones running the streets. So just know who your DA is, know your local politics. Your local politics are important because they're going to affect your day-to-day life more than President Brandon. Yes, I said President Brandon. Okay, his Alvin Bragg is going to have a bigger impact on your day-to-day life than President Brandon. Okay, then than Chuck Schumer is going to have for you people in New York. This Alvin Bragg is going to affect your day-to-day life more then a Chuck Schumer, then a Gillibrand, then a Hochul, although Hochul's been horrible too. So this guy is going to have more effect on your daily life than you realize. So don't just go there and vote one party. Okay, I'm just going to vote D all the way down. See what these people are going to stand for, and you see what's going on with the crime in the city. Don't vote for this guy. And I think this guy is right here. Former police commissioner warns of new DA's soft on crime approach. Start a recall election now. And I agree, because the new mayor ran on that he was going to be tougher on crime than de Bozo. For people who don't know, I mean de Blasio, but I call him de Bozo. You need to see, so Adams could say he's going to be run on tough on crime, but if the DA is not going to help him out, then yes, recall him. Bring in someone that's going to bring order back to the streets. Because what's going on there is just going to be it's going to be a clusterfuck of criminals running the streets, and people going to go back to the 80s and 70s, the early 80s, late 70s, when gangs and criminals ran the streets. People were afraid. After a certain time, you didn't want to be in. You didn't want to. There were certain areas in the city you didn't want to be at a certain time. So if we want to, if you want cities to go back to this, if you're in New York and you want New York City to go back to this, if you're in other towns where you have these Soros-sponsored DAs, you have to be careful. This is going to happen in your town, in your cities, if you keep electing DAs like this Alvin Bragg guy. That's what's going to go on. Okay, no, I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed the video. Tomorrow I'm gonna do a special video on because tomorrow's a 1-year anniversary of January 6th. So we all know, all the bullshit that we're gonna see on the news. We're already seeing it. So I'm gonna start with some of the probably gonna release it early tomorrow, may film it late today. We'll see how it goes. But there's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to that nonsense. So that's for another video. Please, if you like me on YouTube, please subscribe. Please sign up for Rumble, and follow me also on Rumble, because YouTube's with the way YouTube censors, you never know what videos of mine you're going to get, where you don't have to worry about that on Rumble. And I don't have to worry about what I could say on Rumble. I'm not censored on Rumble. And interact with me on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, Clout Hub, Parler, Getter, all those. I'm on them. Follow me on there. Interact with me. Comments on my videos. Appreciate it. And have a good one, everyone.